This is like a fireside chat, except I don't have a fireplace. But I want to talk about home ownership versus renting. I don't understand renting. I used to rent when I was a young guy with my first job, rented an apartment. But I don't get the point of renting. I can see it for a young person to do that. But the only purpose I can find for renting is either you're constantly changing cities, towns for different jobs, and you can't reasonably own a home, or you're renting so you can save enough money for a down payment to own a home. Which gets to the purpose. What is the purpose of home ownership? Well, you say it's my castle. But let me give you a more practical reason for home ownership. The practical reason for home ownership is to have a place to retire that's cheap to live in and nice. Nice is important. I'll give you an example. In my neighborhood, the typical rental fee for a standalone house like I have, the rental is about $2,000 a month. If I wanted to live in my neighborhood and retire in my neighborhood, but I didn't own a home, so I'm going to rent here, I'd have to pay $2,000 a month to live in my own house. That's ridiculous. Because if I had to come up with $2,000 every month to rent here, I'd probably be working. I don't know what kind of job I could do, but I'd have to work to come up with that money. But what would normally happen is, of course, I couldn't even afford to live here. I would have to get a cheap apartment somewhere that I could afford, something that a lousy job would afford. But that would cost me about $24,000 a year to rent where I'm living now. On the other hand, I pay between $5,000 and $6,000 a year for basic insurance and taxes. That's my nut to live here. Well, there's a big difference. There's about $18,000 difference. Now you say, oh, well, you'll spend that on maintenance every year. Well, as long as you have your health, I'm not going to spend $18,000 a year on maintenance. There's no way. Not when I do most of the things myself. The only two things I can't do in this house is put on a new roof and put on a new coating on the pool. Those are skills that I won't touch. But everything else, I can do myself. So that's the consequences of renting all your life. As you get to retirement and your rents have gone up and up and up. So it doesn't make any sense to me to rent. As soon as you can, get a down payment and buy a house. Now, other people say, well, home ownership is good for building equity. I don't agree with that. I have tons of equity in my house. I'm not going to take a loan out. I don't need a loan. The equity is useless. I'll tell you who the equity is good for. It's good for your heirs, and that's it. You're going to get no benefit from your equity. And the danger of having equity is taking a loan, a mortgage or a second mortgage on that equity. Well, that's great. But you know what? You have monthly payments now to make on the property. And the typical real estate scenario is after a while, housing goes bust. Prices fall. The economy gets bad. Now you've got this loan on the property. The economy's bad. You might even lose your job. Now, if you lose your job, how are you going to pay this loan off? Well, you can't. So now what's going to happen, because you've tapped the equity in your property, you lost your job, now you're going to lose your home in foreclosure. So that's one of the biggest myths about home ownership, is building equity. Forget about that. The important thing about home ownership is having a place free and clear to live in when you retire. It's like when you invest in the stock market when you're working. Well, what do you invest for? You invest for your retirement. Well, it's the same thing with your home. You're investing for your retirement here. You think of your home as like your clothes that covers you. It's a roof over your head. If someone came along and said, hey, I'll buy your clothes for twice as much as you paid for it, well, would you give them your clothes and go naked? No, it's ridiculous. Your clothes are a necessity, and the roof over your head is a necessity. So my way of thinking is home ownership is essential if you want to retire one day, and hopefully you will. It's very essential to own a home. Why? Because the amount of money you're going to pay for the quote-unquote rent on your property, which you own, is very low compared to what you would pay to rent the property. So as you can see, I don't find any good excuse for renting other than saving enough money for a down payment on a house. And the purpose of a house is having a place to retire.